Can you tell me where?
Fala pessoal, sou Kelvin Araújo, estamos aqui em mais um vídeo do nosso canal. Antes de eu falar do que se trata o vídeo de hoje, eu peço para que vocês adotem o procedimento padrão de sempre. Deixa o like, se inscreva, ative o sininho para as notificações e nos sigam nas nossas outras redes sociais. Facebook Progland, Instagram Prog_Land. Se você produz música, conhece alguém que produz música, nos siga também no Groover, mande a sua música no Groover, Prog_Land. E também, por último, mas não menos importante, siga o nosso site, proglandmusica.wordpress.com, em que lá também nós temos entrevistas e resenhas de lançamentos brilhantemente feitas pelo nosso colaborador Thiago Menezes, né? Introdutório feito, eu vou falar do que se trata o vídeo de hoje. Ah, claro, não esqueçam, por favor, de contribuir com a nossa campanha. Nossa chave Pix progtalk2112@gmail.com. Por favor, ajudem a manter a Progland ativa, né? Contribuições de 5 a 10 reais mensais para todo mundo, para não ficar pesado para ninguém. E a gente, com esse dinheiro, a gente obviamente pretende contratar um editor de vídeo e também atualizar o nosso site para termos mais conteúdos de maior qualidade em menos tempo para vocês, né? Por favor, contribuam. Introdutório feito, eu vou falar do que se trata o vídeo de hoje. Nós estamos voltando com mais uma entrevista internacional. O vídeo de hoje ele meio que interrompe um pouco a nossa série de vídeos que a gente está fazendo, que é a ordem progressivo, né? Dedicada à música progressiva, a rock progressivo brasileiro, a discos, eventos e tudo mais. E a entrevista de hoje é com ninguém mais, ninguém menos que David Cross, violinista, um dos maiores violinistas da história do rock progressivo, ex-integrante do King Crimson entre 72 e 74. Na entrevista ele fala sobre a carreira dele, etc. E sobre o momento que ele está vindo agora no Brasil, né? Ele vai fazer 2 apresentações aqui com a banda brasileira Dialeto, banda de rock progressivo brasileira, fundada e liderada pelo Nelson Coelho, né? A gente publicou uma entrevista com eles no nosso canal também, né? Com o Nelson falando sobre o Dialeto. A gente publicou, na verdade, no nosso site. Vamos deixar aqui o link também na bio, no fixado para vocês verem, etc. Também porque a entrevista é um complemento. E ele fala também dessa série de shows que ele vai fazer com a banda brasileira de prog, né? Que vão ser 2 apresentações, no dia 28 em São Paulo e no dia 30 em Porto Alegre, né? E vamos também colocar o link aqui na bio, na descrição, fixado para quem quer adquirir ingressos. Os ingressos estão baratíssimos. Vamos falar sobre essa colaboração, sobre o disco que eles fizeram reinterpretando peças do Bela Bártok, famoso compositor clássico húngaro também, que foi regravado por vários outros artistas. Fire Ballet gravou coisa deles, o Emerson Lake Palmer principalmente também. E também, claro, falar sobre momentos, partes da história do King Crimson, né? Memórias de shows, memórias da convivência na época, lembranças, né? E tudo mais numa entrevista fabulosa, fantástica. Eu espero que vocês curtam a entrevista. E deixem também nos comentários o que vocês acharam do papo. Boa entrevista a todos vocês. Fala pessoal, estamos aqui em mais uma entrevista internacional aqui no nosso canal. E hoje mais uma entrevista com alguém muito especial, um dos músicos mais prolíficos da sua geração, um cara que é sinônimo de prolificidade, de técnica e tudo mais. David Cross here,
Thanks so much for your acceptance, your patience, and your good willing to do this interview. David is doing two concerts here in Brazil by the end of October, 28th and 30th of October here in Brazil, in São Paulo, doing these shows with the band, with the Brazilian band Dialeto. He had previously done some shows with them, and we're gonna cover, of course, aspects of this new live show and some of the older aspects of his career, his solo band, and many other subjects. And my first question is related to that. You're now returning to Brazil once again with Dialeto band
Yes,
alongside with Nelson and the other guys. Previously, they had invited you for a collaboration in 2017 in
yes,
Bartok in rock, a reinterpretation Bela Bártok's material into the rock context and whatever. And
yeah.
you and the guys had done a series of shows together back then. You collaborate with so many artists alongside your career, and I would like to ask, what is the difference of collaborating with the Dialeto guys and the other ones that you had previously collaborated with? What is like to be doing this show with them?
I think that the really big thing was that they had a great idea and they had a great theme, which was the down to Nelson Collio, which was the idea of taking Bartok's music and turning it into putting it into a rock context. And it's a very clear and positive idea. Yeah, I wish I'd thought of it myself, so that's why it was particularly special. And they are a great band, very very skilled musicians and very nice people, and I thoroughly enjoyed the doing the collaboration. It was not easy for me. It was quite a challenge, and it was stretched me a lot. And I really like that. I was being pushed outside my comfort zone. Um, I was familiar with Bartok, but the standard of the band was very high, and their ambition was great. So it was, it was a real challenge for me to take it on. So that was wonderful, and to get another bite at the cherry, to have another go at it now is really exciting for me. It's fabulous, and I'm enjoying preparing for it. And I'll be even better prepared than last time.
You had said that it was challenging.
Yeah.
Why it was?
Why? Because the music's difficult. It's hard to count up to seven.
Yeah.
If you're doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and you blink, you've done 8, and then you're in all kinds of trouble. It's tricky stuff. It's I'm used to doing counts, but I've also gotten complacent about material that was complicated
Yeah.
for me a number of years ago. But I've got so used to it now, I can feel the rhythms, in my bones. But I was having to count this, which is what you have to do when you're
Yeah.
trying to do something new, and it's tricky.
Yeah.
To try and put some passion into it when you're still trying to play the notes
Yeah.
is difficult as well. So it was challenging, and they were all over it. They were really good. Nelson is demanding. He's a great band leader, and he's got high standards, so he's great to work with as well. Yeah, and I also set targets for myself as well. Always trying to find new ways of improvising, new ways of trying to generate that life that you've got to have when you're playing live. That sort of sense of hearing something for the first time. It's always really important, and So I'm always looking for new ways to do that, and I'm experimenting with different things. And I've always got something new I'm doing on the violin as well. So
Mm-hmm.
there's always plenty of challenges.
Yeah. And do you intend to record anything with them as a studio outfit in the future? You because you had you had collaborated with
Yeah,
so different people, and I always thought, oh, it
yeah,
would be really cool a full album with both of them.
yeah. The trouble is, I really don't like working on my own. And all recording these days is done on your own when when you're a soloist. People send you the tracks, and you've got to sit down and play. I mean, I've got an album here of mine. Actually, it's mostly other people's stuff, but I've got an album waiting for me to finish it. It's just one track I've got to finish, and I find it really hard because I find myself utterly uninspiring. I mean, there's no fun sitting
Mhm.
down with yourself and listening to yourself. It's just kind of soul destroying. And so, although years ago I embraced the whole concept of being able to do everything for yourself on a laptop, but soon it
Mhm.
kind of wore off, and I don't get any pleasure out of it now. It's just work, and I don't really want to do things for work. I'm too old for that. I want to love every moment of my life, and um, working on my own recording stuff isn't fun. It's tedious. I hate it.
Yeah.
I hate being the producer of myself. I hate trying to tell myself jokes to make myself laugh. It's no way to live. Um, I can do it if I force myself, or if I see a good reason. But it's very difficult and no fun. I really, really, if I'm going to record, I really want to do it in a studio with other people and have a laugh and have some pizza and complain about the world and
so
things
that's
like that.
so that's the reason why you always try to pick up partners and whatever
Yeah,
to make the
yeah.
things more easier.
Well, it is. It's more fun. I like. You don't get any laughs on your own, and I really like to laugh. I really
Hmm.
like fun in my life, and it's on your own. It's just so tedious.
Yeah.
And there's something to do. Also, I kind of as I'm getting older, I kind of realize that for me, um, music. When I play music, it is very much about working with other people. It's kind of like a talk or a chat, or something even more intimate than that. There's kind of
Mhm.
something about music that's a very personal interaction, and actually that I treasure. And if I'm not doing that, I kind of start asking myself, well, what am I doing? If it's
Mhm.
just me playing, what am I doing? Am I telling people what to do? Am I saying, look at me? I just kind of,
Yeah.
it's the subtext, so what am I doing? Why am I just standing there making all these noises? But if there's somebody else there, or there's something there to work from, if there's another person, then you just play and it works, and you don't have to say anything in words. It kind of the music builds itself, and that experience I enjoy. you know but to
Mhm.
kind of, when you record yourself, it's like talking to a blank screen. Just sitting,
Yeah.
sitting down here looking at a black screen going, hi, I'm
You
David
know,
Cross, I'm really happy to.
but
That's why I didn't want to look
it's
at myself
yeah.
for the
It's
whole
always it's always
interview.
good to have that another POV because always you had another ear, another point of view, another
Yeah,
opinions, another feedbacks, other than ourselves. It's
yeah,
makes the things more fresher. You avoid repeating
yeah,
yourself, and I suppose it that in your work because every single album from your collaborations album, from King Crimson albums, from it sounds really different each one of them.
yeah,
Starless and Bible Black is quite unlike Another Day that you had done with David
yes.
Jackson and whatever.
You're,
And
you're well
that's
informed.
the real deal of collaboration.
Yeah, yeah, I'm very fond of Another Day. That was a very important album for me. Yeah, it's very, um, it's a very rich field, and
Hmm.
every person has a very very different viewpoint, and
Hmm.
that's exhilarating, you know. Um, it kind of slotting into something is not.
Hmm.
If you're dropping into something, it's anybody could drop in there. Just a slot fill. It's just a slot for the violin player. Drop in there, and it doesn't really work. But if it's me and I'm talking to somebody like you, this is a conversation, and this is
Yeah.
something to treasure, and um,
Oh.
this will change my life. This will enrich me. I'm sure. I'm sure I'll know more by the end of the interview.
You that definitely enriches me. Come on, spare me. You know. I would like to ask another collaboration,
Yeah,
recent collaboration that you had done, of course, with David Jackson from Banda Graff Generator in Another Day album. That's a really great record, and I did not know that about this information until very recently. That it was entirely improvisational. The
yes.
album, most of them, and how and I need to ask to go back more in time. How did you meet him at first? How the origins of this collaboration had began, and how the how was the process of creating this album, writing the tracks, experimenting the things in the studio with him, because he's so artisanal as a player. He's a sort of really, I call him a sort of a scientist, because his saxophone lines in Van der Graaf Generator were really unconventional. He experimented with some effects with Roland Kirk thing of two sax in one mouth and these things. And how
Mm.
was the process of creating with him and knowing him?
Well, it was always very exciting. I mean, he's a very big character. He's a big storyteller, and it's very much a larger than life kind of character.
Mhm.
I mean, I met him. I got somebody wasn't playing. I think possibly it was Trey Gunn was
Oh
supposed to
yeah.
play at a festival in Verona or something like that, and so they wanted somebody else to stand in. So I can't remember who I played with now. He was playing with Osana. I think uh, I played with who did I play with? I can't remember. It was an Italian band, but I was brought in at the last minute to do this because they wanted somebody from Crimson, and so I just met David at the airport. I think that was what was going. Were we both playing in the same band? I can't remember. Uh, anyway, we were both. I met him at the airport. There was somebody trying to check in his sports equipment. His
Mhm.
big trunk full of ski equipment or something. He was taken to Italy in the height of the summer. You know, which is of course was in his saxophones and things like that. Big trunk. And he was causing a big fuss at the oversized counter when I arrived, and that was how I first met him. Anyway, actually, we chatted on the flight and got on very well. And I think we were playing with the same band, so I think we had some stuff we had to do together.
Yeah.
And then but somehow we set up doing an improvised set on our own as well, because we
Yeah.
worked out we were both improvisers. So we did this kind of improvised set. So that's how we met, and that's how we started. We invented an act called Cross and Jokes, and on the way there, and we performed. When we got to this place, and so we started right from the beginning with improvisation, and it was something that we both loved and were interested in. So it was always at the core of our relationship, and we everything on Another Day, did begin from an improvisation, and then we built it up from there. So sometimes we took something away that we'd improvised on and elaborated on it a bit and did a bit of arrangement and then brought it back and recorded it again. But a lot of the time we just recorded stuff and then built on those recordings or subtracted things from them to try and build things up. And in some were, kind of 4-person. We had Mick Paul on bass, Craig Blundell on drums, and we just did a four-piece improvisations in studio and just saw what happened to those. So it was liberating. I think the thing that tends to make collaborations work, and I think that one does work, is kind of having shared background of sources, that you're familiar with something like the similar kinds of music, or you share a certain vocabulary, and that makes it possible, I think, because it's there's so much guesswork involved in improvisation that sometimes you need to be able to predict somehow or feel where the music's going, where the other person's going.
The music is quite guided by the chance,
Yeah, it is. It's very much guided by chance. Yeah, and there are lots of surprises in there because somebody wins the lottery every now. Somebody's got to win the lottery, and every now and again there's a there's a chance coincidence that we end on the same note or something like that. All of us, so,
yeah.
So there were some lucky chances in there, which things that I now remember the bass player suddenly being surprised that he'd actually.
What the heck? What the heck this guy do? Oh yeah,
sounded like he was in the right place, but it was really really a rich experience. I tend to spend a lot of time thinking about stuff as well in between, which is a waste of time. It's actually usually not thinking. It's usually I usually dislike everything immediately I've recorded it, so I have to recover from that hatred of what I'm doing.
Oh
before I
yeah.
can move on again. It's a kind of the sort of judgmental part of yourself. So when I'm making music, I love it. I love every note, and it's wonderful. The minute it's finished, if I hear it coming back, I think, "Oh no, I shouldn't have done that. Oh, that's awful." Oh,
You've always been like this.
Yeah, I've always.
You've always been like very critical of it.
Yeah, sometimes it lasts for decades, but that's why it takes me so long to do everything. I get great ideas. As soon as I put them into practice and hear them, I think, "Oh no, that's awful," and then maybe 3 months later, I think, "Oh, actually, it's not so bad. If I did this."
Yeah.
David,
You need to take time. You need to take time to.
It takes time for me to recover. It takes time for me to get my confidence back again. And he got very fed up with that because the stuff was. If I'd been more fluid, we would have been just able to probably do the whole thing in about a couple of months or something. But it kind of dragged on over years because I just didn't have faith in it and backed off, and then suddenly then I suddenly get a bout of confidence and we move forward. I'd move my bit forwards a bit. He's kind of more. He's got a more sustained level of self-confidence than I do. I'm racked with doubt all the time. Yeah, but it's great. It's great fun, and I'm very proud of it actually.
And I would like to ask about your solo band albums.
Yeah.
Among all of them, which one are you most proud of?
I think there's two. I think Closer Than Skin and Sign of the Crow are the two that I think are most coherent, really. I think, and they're the most. They have a kind of band sound to them, which I like, and they both got lyrics by Richard Palmer James, and they hang together. Who wrote some of the King Crimson lyrics for the band I was in?
Amazing lyricist.
They are, yeah. They don't. If you try and work out what on earth they mean, they're very elusive. They don't. It's not obvious what he's talking about, but they're very evocative. So you know, you hear a line, you think, wow, you know, that's
Mhm.
that's a kind of familiar image or something like that. So they I think they do work very well, but they work in a similar way to the way that music does. You know, music just kind of plants something in your head, and then you make it your own. You put all the color into it. You turn it into something that means something to you somehow. You know, you attach it to your feelings. I don't think you're getting you know, the
Mhm.
artist's feelings. I think you're getting this artist stimulus, and then you create your own feelings in response to it. Something like that is going on. I forgot what I was talking about now. Oh, the best albums.
No,
Yeah.
no.
No, Closer Than Skin. Yeah, Richard Palmer James.
Mhm.
So those two, I I have a soft spot for the um, Ice Blue Silver Sky, which was the last
Yeah.
album that
Mhm.
we did. In that it was it was an experiment, and it was an interesting experiment. I think.
Mhm.
Um, I was kind of obsessed with what musicians brought to the music, you know, and I wanted to kind of front the musicians in it in some ways. So we talked. By that time there were four of us in the band, and we just talked about how we got into music, what we wanted to do at this point in our careers, and stuff like that. And then I tried to sort of bring out key phrases from everybody, and then build those into themes that ran through the
Mhm.
album. So there's kind of spoken text themes and stuff like that. And um, I really thought that it was going to kind of highlight things in the music, but it kind of the opposite worked. Somehow the music
Mhm.
became more important, and
Yeah.
somehow the message that I got out of it at the end was that um, the music kind of works despite the music, whatever the musicians are doing to it, you know. So the musicians, it's not really that. Musicians are kind of vehicles. They're kind of ways in which the music kind of finds its way into the world. But I think the kind of sense and the spirit and the drive of the music is if it's good music, it somehow kind of works itself, and it will work itself through anybody who's kind of who can play it, who can play reasonably. It will kind of work its way through them.
Mhm.
You know, if they by that can play reasonably, and what I'm talking about is if they're open to music coming through them. Um,
Yeah.
so they need to be open-minded people. They need to be open-hearted people. You know, and if you get the people right, it can come through. But what the people are actually contributing, it seemed to me in the end, was really not much of themselves. It's more what they're allowing to happen.
Mhm.
It's important. So it's not visible stuff, you know. Um, it's the kind of it's what they absorb and what they feel that comes out, and that's on a different level. And often they
Mhm.
don't know. Musicians don't know what they're feeling, or even what they're able to do. You know, I remember working with there's a guy I used to work with in a band called Radius, called Jeff Searle, and
Yeah.
what I remember about working with him, which was kind of sort of jazz rock stuff, really. But
Mhm.
I always remember going to a studio with him and playing something and thinking straight after when I listened back to it, I thought, wow, I didn't think it was me. I thought, how I can't do that. You know, how did
Mhm.
that happen? And it was just something to do with the way he'd set the music up that enabled me to play at my best, you know, and enabled the music to come through. And I don't think I would have been able to play. I remember on some particular lines, I wouldn't have been able to do that if I'd sat down and thought about it. But because, you know,
Mhm.
because I was just open and open to what he created, it just came out because it was the right thing to play, you know, and it tumbled into, you know, tumbled from the music into me and out into the onto the track. So you know, there is this kind of life that music has that's almost independent of the people.
And I would like to go back now in time to a
Yeah.
certain period of time, you know, your time with King Crimson, of course. And instead of always doing the questions of how was creating the violin solo for lock songs in Aspic and whatever, I would like to draw a picture of that period, 1972 to 1974, in memories that you have from certain persons, from certain events and whatever. And I would like to ask now if you remember the first rehearsal that you had with the band, probably by June or July 1972, because the
Yeah.
original lineup had folded, had ended up in March by April, and soon thereafter Robert Fripp started searching the guys and starting to getting the things back on the track for the new lineup, which recorded Lock Songs. Do you remember this first rehearsal, the first meeting of you, Robert, John, Jamie, and Bill in the studio or in a rehearsal
No,
house or whatever?
no, I don't. I don't remember the first meeting of five of us. It was because it didn't come together in that way. What happened was that I was in a band trying to get a deal with a record deal, and
Waves.
one of the people, one of the people we'd asked was EG Management, who were managing King Crimson and
Mhm.
Bob's Music, um, and they came down, and Robert came with them to come and hear us play with this band I was with. Sorry, the band was, what was the band called? Waves, I think. No, that was, what's McCartney's band? That was what's Paul McCartney's band? You don't know.
Wings.
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 That's right. So maybe it was Waves. I knew it was something like Wings. Yeah, I think it was Waves or
It
something.
was Waves.
The name of the band, my band. Yeah, well, not
Yeah.
my band I was in. Anyway, we were rehearsing, and Robert came down there and he heard that, and then later I got a call from him saying that he was interested in doing um, a kind of album based on ragas, Indian ragas, and he was wondered if I'd be interested in doing something with that. And I got together with him and Jamie Muir playing percussion,
Mhm.
Jamie's house in London, and we had a session there. Um, and then after that, uh, yeah, there was another call from him. Um, and by then he'd started to think about King Crimson, because
Yeah.
this first thing was just supposed to be an album, just basically improvised music. We know maybe a few tunes.
So originally, at first, it wasn't King Crimson.
No, it wasn't. It was a trio of
Oh yeah.
me, Robert, and Jamie Muir. And
Okay.
so his King Crimson had stopped by that stage, and he was just
Yeah.
following what he
Hmm.
was interested in, really. And then he must have had some kind of epiphany, and he thought, so he wanted to try out kind of putting that together with kind of rock drums and bass. So he got Bill down for a session. John couldn't make it. He was doing something with Family. He was in a band called
Hmm.
Family, and he couldn't make it. So John wasn't there, but it was Bill, Jamie, Robert, and me. We had the first session in a studio in
Hmm.
Covent Garden, and that somehow at that session, Bill was kind of forced into. He had to make a decision about whether he wanted to. It did become King Crimson in that session. It was part of the discussion that went on, and Bill had to leave, yes, and join King Crimson on that day. So then we didn't get together with John until, I think there was a kind of gap of, I don't know, a few weeks, certainly a month or so, before we started rehearsals. No, I don't remember the first rehearsal when we were all there. No.
But the other one, I think that I probably led you to a sort of misleading, because I was asking about if you had any remembrance or
Yeah.
remembering of you guys, you five guys together, the first remembering that you had. Not
Right, okay.
necessarily the first one, but the first one that came to
Okay.
your
The first
head.
one, I think the first one I remember was doing a photo shoot at a house in Hampstead, I think.
Mhm.
So there must. So I had some new clothes. I know that. So I had a new pair of jeans and some a new shirt that I bought. So I remember that. I remember that mostly. We basically hired this sort of posh-looking house in Hampstead
Mhm.
for a photo shoot, and sat round a table pretending we just had a
Mhm.
banquet or something daft like that. And standing in a line and standing on stairs and all these things that you do to try and get a decent picture. So I can't remember. Maybe I already had a suit by then. I might have bought one of my satin suits by then as well. So it was mostly about dressing up, nothing about music. But
Yeah. No, not at all.
that's the
Great
first thing
memories indeed.
that's the first thing I remember. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't remember. I remember the first time we went on stage very clearly. That was extraordinary. That was fantastic.
30th October 1972, Zoom Club in Germany.
That's right. It was. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Man, I always, one of the things that I most love, worship about King Crimson, that Robert Fripp and you guys were absolutely mad in the great sense, because, man, you need to have a huge, brave move to do a 1 hour and a half show and 50 to 60 minutes of the show purely improvisational. I
Yeah.
was hearing some records of this first
Yeah.
show, and there happened an improvisational piece for 45 minutes
Really?
uninterruptedly. I thought, man, this is really extraordinary. You have to have balls to do that. You know.
Or be very ignorant. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure why we did it, but yeah, we were committed to. I mean, there was it was part of the mood of the time, and also I think at that stage, because of the way
Mhm,
that I had got into it with Jamie and Robert, kind of
mhm,
we'd seen that there was some value in that kind of trio, if you want, already.
mhm,
So I think that kind of gave us confidence
mhm,
that our skill, in which I was, very into improvisation, and Jamie was the past master of improvisation. And I think that gave us confidence that was where we were going as well. Bill was kind of theoretically, into improvisation. He's a great, jazz lover and
mhm,
player, and and John was just very open, I think, at that stage,
mhm,
and also he had very, massive kind of musical breadth. I mean, he understood a lot about, music of all kinds, kind of folk music, classical
mhm,
music. He played violin as well. He was a
mhm,
kind of all-round musician. Um, so there was a kind of confidence, and there was a uh, borders were being broken down a lot in music in those days. There was great thing going. Indo jazz fusions was um, something that was happening, which was really really interesting. There was a lot of crossover stuff. Um,
mhm,
improvisation, I guess, was in vogue then. So it was a kind of different. There was a different sensibility around. Certainly in Europe, I think it was more difficult in the States, but certainly in Europe, people were kind of up for anything really. I think at that stage. So it wasn't so extraordinary because it was kind of a sign of the times in a way, but it was enormously liberating to be able to do that, and what it did for me is it gave me a chance to play because that's the way that I kind of engage with music. If I improvise, I can't without being emotionally involved in it, without being totally engaged in it. Whereas if I've got a tune to play or something like that, it's that on the first time I encounter it, or if I'm nervous, that throws me right back to kind of being learning violin at school and having to do exams like that, and having to and being criticized and and forced to do it again and all the rest of it, and it makes me quite uptight. But improvisation doesn't. I always felt liberated improvising, and felt free and felt able to express something. And so it always enabled me then to kind of relax on stage, and made it easier to play, when I had to play parts, to do those more comfortably. But it was all, there was a lot of new stuff for me going on, really trying to cope with the volume level was quite it's quite new to me, really. I mean, it was I played venues.
You have all that percussion from Jamie Muir, and at the first reviews, I was reading older archives back then, reviewing the concert in 1972, not only in the Zoom Club show, but in the other ones in England by the later part of that year. They always highlighted your violin, and especially the percussion from Jamie Muir, that created a wall of sound, very harsh, hard, different from the previous King Crimson, which was more jazzy, pastoral, orchestrated sound. You were a punch, you was really different.
Yeah, there was it was kind of I think we owed a lot to kind of the whole free improvisation movement, which was which was quite strong, in the UK and in Europe at the time. And it was, a lot of that was quite harsh because it was quite angry. Some of it, some of it was I think there was there was more kind of political anger in some ways then, and I think there was kind of social frustration as well. Things weren't moving as as I think my generation thought they would or should. We thought they were going to get better, but they didn't. They all got worse.
Yeah.
So I
That's the
I kind of, I often wonder why kind of my son's generation, they why they, it's probably actually a bit older than my son's generation, but I expected the anger to keep going, but there was a kind of generation really that kind of just accepted the kind of that the world wasn't going to change for the better, and that's just the way it was going to be. And I think now there's a generation that's angry again, and I think that's kind of, I think that's healthier, really. I think we need but there was a bit of that around then as well, and there was, and I think that edge kind of came from that somehow. But it was, I mean, Jamie was very into. He was into all kinds of sounds, but he was particularly, I think, when he wanted an attack on something, he was, he would look in the kitchen or the bathroom rather than the drum store. He would look for bits of metal. He'd look for, bits of railings, saucepans, and things like that. And he's had a very, very astute ear. And kind of you could hear it feeling. It's like kind of, you could see the potential sound palette. That and the drums were just a tiny part of that. And that if you're a percussionist, you really could do anything, and he did. I mean, he played lovely tunes, played beautiful thumb piano, and he did stuff on glockenspiels and stuff like that. And more beautiful, tiny, tasteful things, tiny sounds he would do. But also, he was absolutely manic when he wanted to be. And, and he was crazy and wasn't going to take any crap from anybody. And it was an astounding experience for me working with him. And talking to him. He was inspirational.
He was.
He was.
Back then, Fripp, and now in the recent years, especially after his passing early this year of Jamie Muir, Robert Fripp has cited him as a sort of spiritual mentor of that lineup in terms of spirit of music, of driving that kind of sound in Lock, Stones, and Yaspic. And I would like to ask about personally and musically too. What are your fondest memories of working with him, with Jamie Muir? Because everyone, Bill Bruford, the proper Robert Fripp, had said that he was a very extraordinary, unique person to get along with.
Yes, he was. I think he had two very clear sides to him, and that was an eye opener for me. Because when we met him, when we started work, we did kind of a 6-week period of supposedly writing music. Most of it was improvising, really. But we did. Out of that came ideas, and Larkstones and stuff came out of that. But it was very kind of genteel in a way. Like it wasn't. It was a bit like I don't know, King's garden party or something like that. It was kind of people quite polite, and Jamie was very softly spoken, calm.
Oh, really?
Respectful. Yeah, he was really kind of. Oh yeah, I don't know. Do you think so? Kind of easygoing, and that kind of set the tone for collaboration that we had. And then when we got to the Zoom Club, and that was his first time on stage, and he, climbed into his, we used to call it a bear suit, some kind of fur jacket he wore, like kind of Hollywood caveman, and put blood capsules in his mouth and took to the stage, and he realized it was this complete maniac that he could be keeping in reserve, which was stage Jamie, and and that was just such a lesson for me. I thought, that, yes, I understand that now. Performance is a different thing. You just hit this, you've got to turn the switch, and you're in performance mode, and and it affected, and the music actually, of course, worked differently when you're in performance as well, so things where we might have got used to kind of moving on in a particular way, or he's getting quiet, or we'll keep, we're going to finish soon, or something like that. None of that would happen on stage. It would just, particularly from Jamie. If he decided he was going to run around on the opposite side of the stage behind Robert and start curling himself into the curtains or hitting the loudspeakers, that's what he did, and that's what he was going to do. and that was just magnificent. You know,
Yeah.
I just loved this the freedom that he had in approaching performance, and you know, I would love to aspire to that. It's just so
Hmm.
beyond me. But his, you know, it's just great. And I'm never sure about Spirit. Uh, he was always very generous. So I suppose it did come from him. Yeah, I think that's probably right. He kind of, but Bill, you see, had Bill kind of, I don't know whether he brought that or whether he bought into Jamie's, but Bill was also very generous,
Hmm.
um, very generous spirited in that, you know, and kind of going out of his way to put himself into things that were, you know, not his comfort zone particularly. He was kind of relishing that, and
Hmm.
somehow maybe it all did come from Jamie, but there was, you know, both of them actually were really. I, I, I it's a funny kind of it's kind of like it's basically parking your egos at the door when you come in.
Hmm.
They left their egos behind. They came in and they were just
Hmm.
focused on
Yeah,
the music.
just a music. Yeah.
There's a real kind of spirit of generosity to do, um, and particularly if you're with new people, you know. And they were both doing that, and I think that I think those two kind of set the stage
Hmm.
really. The way their relationship actually, I thought was fantastic, and their generosity to each other, um,
Hmm.
kind of that pervaded the group, and I think that did set the tone for the first sort of
Yep.
year really of that King Crimson. Yeah, yeah.
Was You said that about shows and improvising. Was there ever a show or a moment that you are able to remember when you hit a sort of a room patch? I know that is pretty hard. It must have been pretty rare because you guys were so good at stage and whatever. And do you remember any moment that you guys had hit a rough patch in the middle of improv or something had go wrong with some equipment? I ask it because
Yeah,
I remember that the Night Watch from Starless and Bible Black
yeah,
originally would have been recorded from the live show. I think it was in
yes,
Amsterdam, or it
absolutely.
was in some part of the Netherlands,
Yeah,
and
it was
and the
Amsterdam.
and the mellotron had broke down in the middle of a
Right.
section that and you had to redo
Yeah,
that part in the studio. Do you
yeah.
remember this moment? Any kind of moment was that, and that kind of it it it, it fuels the anxious feeling of the improvisation, because something that had go wrong and you had to hurry up to sort of solve the thing there on stage.
Well, I mean, we all had party tricks. I mean, we all had a little thing we could do to keep the audience entertained if we had to fill a gap. You know, I used to have a made up. I think is that seven? I think we used to do a kind of reel in seven beats or something like that. That I used to do as a filler. Robert would do some guitar thing from previous album or something like that. So everybody had
I
something
remember there's a show
something
he
to do.
he played some pieces of Peace from In the Wake of Poseidon, which is a guitar piece,
Yes,
while
yes,
something
that would
was
probably
fixed
be it.
on stage.
Yeah. So he might do that if something breaks down, or you know, if the mellotrons are on. Yeah, I mean, most equipment breakdowns were pretty solved pretty quickly by the tech crew. I think the things that started to be a problem were musical when later on we started when we had pretty much exhausted everything, when we kind of knew everything that everybody else could do in the band. And then we started you'd fall into repeating things and then expecting it to repeat like it did last time somehow, and that's not a very good place to be musically. So it stops being fresh at that point. So that was really a dangerous time really for us, was when we when it wasn't all new and fresh. So it's when it tended I think to come from, well, it probably came from all of us, that there's only so much you can think of that's new, so you're bound to repeat yourself in style to some extent. But I noticed, it's a kind of thing that we all do. It's a problem I notice now with improvising as well, that people have expectations, so it's a thing like you'd set up you'd have a kind of, like, you set up a backing track and you're expecting somebody to solo over it. So what if the person doesn't feel like soloing? Then what are you going to do? Instead you've got this stupid backing track with nothing happening. So it's pointless setting up a backing track, really, if you see what I mean. It's there's a kind of, those are the sort of traps that I think we tend to fall into. If you've always done a duet together, and you've always followed a particular chord sequence, if you fall into that, if everybody else has got to follow that, then that's just repeating what you've done before. Those are really the danger areas if you're trying to lead with improvisation. And because then you stop being in the moment. What you do is you start remembering what happened before and then comparing it with what you're doing now, and that's when everything tends to fall down and the focus goes. The charge goes, the energy goes, the electricity's not there. So those power failures are the ones that bother me, and rather than equipment failures.
That lineup you were part eventually ended by 1974, just before the Red era. And I always thought that, I always kind of frustration for me, because I would love if that lineup would last more albums and more shows and more records and whatever. In terms of chemistry, musical direction, personal dynamics, what could have kept King Crimson longer back then? And I ask it because Bill Bruford has launched sometime his YouTube channel, and he made comments from every single video he posts there. And there was a video that he posted from King Crimson. I think it was a performance from Lament, from that programs in that TV programs in German and whatever. And he had said that one of the reasons he thought that that lineup and the King Crimson had dissolved back then, that the band was really, in terms of performing on stage, too loud, too intense, and sometimes the sound could be more refined in that sense, because he said that he had said about your violin, your playing, that sometimes we could play so loud. And Robert Fripp had cited that playing with him and John was a flying brick wall, because sometimes it could be really pretty intense. And what kind of, do you agree with that? Do you felt that in terms of sonically, the things got too harsher in a sense in some part of that 1974 too, that made you sound with a little less space to the music? And in terms of analyzing those days, do you
Um,
think that something could have kept King Crimson going longer in terms of musically make?
well, what happened happened. So I don't think anything could have happened differently. But um, there's a from the distance now, looking back at it, with hindsight, there's a kind of there's a thing to do with which which is you playing an instrument like playing the violin or singing.
Hmm.
I've been singing more this last year. I joined a choir and stuff like that. It's particularly noticeable, I think, for singers. When if you try too hard, you can't do it. You take away your sensitivity. You take away your ability to express um, deeper things. It's like shouting. If you're shouting all the time, your range of expression is going to be very limited.
Hmm.
You can't express momentary doubt, through shouting.
Hmm.
I'm sure good actors could, but it's kind of limits what you're doing. And in a way, we were, I think, we were moving into a lot of shouting, and uh,
Hmm.
and there wasn't so much room for more subtle expression, I would say. On a violin, it's when you press too hard on the string, and rather than make it louder, what it does is it chokes the sound. The string can't vibrate properly anymore,
Hmm.
so the expressive quality goes from it. If you're singing and you're using all your breath trying to get the sound out, trying to make a loud sound, you've got your control over your vocal cords, disappears, and you can't produce anything subtle. And I think that as a band, maybe that's the sort of thing that was happening. But I wasn't really thinking that way at the time. That's with hindsight, I kind of say that. I did think we'd lost some of the sort of more sensitive areas. I think the courage to be quiet, the
Hmm.
courage to play very quietly, and the courage to not play, the courage to play reflectively. I think those
Hmm.
things were being lost at the expense of some great riffs. So it's you gain and you lose things, don't you? Um, but I think it's an interesting evolution. I mean, I quite like the first there were five and then there were four and then there were three. I
Hmm.
think it's a nice little story, isn't it? Um, so you know,
Did, did you heard something from then after your departure? Things from Adrian Belew or whatever?
did
Did you
I
heard
what?
something?
Did I hear something? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yes, yes, in and out. Yeah, I've been to gigs and things like that, particularly the more recent, the kind of three drummer band. I've seen them a couple of times, well, as they were. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes, I did see
And
Adrian Blue. Yeah, with them. Yes.
I'd like to ask the work with Robert Fripp on Starlight Starless 40 years later.
Yeah.
What the changes of your dynamics as recording and writing together had changed from the 70s to the 2014
Yeah.
2015?
Well, we had got together before that because Robert played on an album called Exiles that I did, and which
Yeah.
which explored that track, and he made some great contributions, and John had played on it, John Wetton had played on it as well. So we worked together, and we had done work together in the studio on that, and he was great there. It was just like when we first met. It was great fun. It was lovely, and he's always been very helpful. One with the Starlight thing, it was a bit different because it was kind of the tune, the opening tune of Starless was a kind of obsession of mine for a long time, and Robert had done some improvisations on it, and actually what I did was I worked from those and my own composition and put those two things together. So we're never in a studio at the same place at the same time. It was all kind of working remotely. But I really enjoyed that, and I enjoyed making that album. And there's an extraordinarily obvious thing about that which I didn't realise till after I made it, which of course it's all in the same key all the way through, because I just kept doing the same tune in different ways. I didn't transpose it to a different key, which is a bit odd and not the sort of thing I would normally do. But I didn't realise till afterwards. But actually, there's a kind of that's part of what gives it a kind of unity, and I think makes it a bit more trancey than it might otherwise be. But no, I mostly my kind of relationships with Robert have been phone calls and emails and stuff like that. I met him on the cruise to the edge in April, which was probably when he was having his heart attack, or the day before he had his heart problem. So we were supposed to have coffee the next day, but he wasn't well enough. So that was that. But I had a quick chat with him then. And it just whenever I see him, it just seems like when we were in our 20s to me. Yeah. No, he was always
the final question of our interview. I finally will set you free.
Unchain my heart. Yes.
If you could pick one King Crimson track and one solo band track from your solo career or from your solo collaboration that definitely defines you as a performer, as a writer, as a musician, which ones would you choose? I love doing these hard questions.
Trio from King Crimson.
Oh, that's really beautiful.
Thank you. And The Pool from, which I think was on Sign of the Crow, I think. And that's from the David Cross band. Those are my favourite, personal favourites. Yeah.
And your favorite violin piece?
What in the universe? You mean what?
In the universe. In the universe. Yeah.
Favorite violin piece. I kind of was originally drawn into music by romantic violin concertos, and probably the Mendelssohn violin concerto was probably the thing that broke my heart. It's a contender between that, the slow movement of the Mendelssohn violin concerto, or actually probably it's the second movement of the Bach double violin concerto. That's the thing that's made me cry most recently. I just heard there was a lovely version of it. I don't know what it was, but it was playing on the radio when I put it on, and it was just these beautiful long notes. I don't know who was playing, but it was just very still. It wasn't doing a lot of vibrato. It was just this lovely. And it was just drawn out beautifully, and I thought, oh yeah, Bach would have loved that. So I think it's the Bach double violin concerto, slow movement.
Thank you very much.
Real pleasure to talk to you, Kelvin. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You're one of the most favorite rock violinists ever. I love violin. It's such a classy instrument, and I love rock. So two of the most things. Yeah, and thank you very much.
Somebody who's so well informed. I mean,
that's
a pleasure.
Oh, thank you very much. And please feel free to, in the near future, do any kind of promotion releases, and the doors are definitely open for you, and we hope that we can do many more interviews in the later years.
All the best to
Thank you
you.
very much.
Bye.
Bye bye.